Here, so I don't know if people are paying attention. Hello, everybody. Hi, it's Natalie from Creative Makers, and I'm here today with Patti.
Hi.
Euvino?
Yeah.
Euvino, I said it right.
Yeah, you did. It's unusual. You know what it means? It means good wine.
Good wine? Mm-hmm. Oh, right.
Right.
Cool. So I have to tell you how I came to Patti. I came to Patti because I went to Juliana Poldy's gallery called Golden Pine in Idlewild, and she was an interview I did a month or 2 months ago. Hi, person that's on, thank you. And I bought a piece, a sculptural piece of a dragon named Cynthia. And when I bought the piece, Juliana said to me, "You need to interview Patti." And so here we are. And yeah. Patti, okay. First of all, there's so many things to say, but first of all, we're going to start like we always do. Mm-hmm. Oh, first of all, I want to say thank you for being here. I'm so excited that you guys show up. All right. So first of all, I'm going to ask my standard question. Tell me about being a kid. Were you a creative kid?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty artsy forever. That was my thing in our family. Nobody else was artistic, and I was artistic. I guess kind of it starts when you're coloring, and I was always outlining. That, you know, I like outside of the lines. That's always been my thing, outside of the lines. And the first thing I can remember that I really did, I want to say second grade. They had a contest where the theme was "No Man is an Island." Mm-hmm. And so I did.
Wait a minute! In second grade, there was a contest called "No Man Is an Island."
It was the theme was "No Man Is an Island."
But they expected you as a second grader to understand
Maybe
that?
It was third.
Oh, but still,
it was little. It was little, and so I did "No Man Is an Island," and I lived in the suburbs. I basically come from the suburbs, and they put it in the paper, which is pretty cool, in the local rag, and from there, I was always drawing. I was a doodler, and art was always my thing, primarily drawing. And when I was in junior high school, my folks sent me to, and actually was an art school for high school called Kensington.
Was it like a charter school where they just
they
focused
didn't have
on
charter
art?
School there, yeah. And I went there for summer, and I have no idea what I did. I don't remember it all. I don't remember it all. I've been drawing forever, but I don't remember. I've been trying to think about it because I knew you were coming, and nobody's alive anymore for me to ask. So I guess this really started, though I've always been drawing and doodling, was in high school. I took art classes, and I wanted to be a fashion designer, but I don't know how to sew. And I didn't know how to sew then, and I still don't know how to sew.
They teach you in fashion school, I know, because I went.
Where'd you go to school?
FITM.
And that was the first job I got when I was in California. And that segged me to something that I wound up doing. So in high school, I wanted to be a fashion designer. And of course, in school, I was doing drawings of clothes and stuff. And I didn't do great in school. So if it wasn't for art, I'd graduate, but it would have been with a lower GPA. And basically, that's all I did when I was younger. You know, I drew for my family. I was always drawing. I was into color pencil. Nothing too big. So when I was 17 years old, I was very gifted in that I went to Woodstock. And that changed me, particularly coming from the suburbs. You know, who ever knew there were that many people on the planet?
How did you get an invitation to Woodstock? I mean, because were you in California?
No, I was in Michigan.
You were in Michigan.
I was from Michigan.
So you were in Michigan. I mean, it's still a little ways from Michigan to New York.
It's really interesting. And I met a guy on my senior trip, which was in Florida.
With a guy.
It's been the story of my life. Yeah, that's kind of what got me on all my adventures. Anyways, we stayed at his parents' home, and we were on our way back to the airport, for me and my suitcase in the back of his car. And on the radio, they were talking about this huge festival. And then they said something about, like, the tickets aren't being sold anymore. There's a massive amount of people. People are just coming. And I called my folks, and I said, I'm going to this big festival. So we drove to the Woodstock area, and the cars, which you probably saw like on movies and things like that, were just lined up on the street. People walking everywhere. So we got out of our car, and I never saw him again. I lost him. My luggage was in the back of his car, and I guess we kind of went like that. And it was a phenomenal experience. It was straight from what you see in the movies, like straight from what you see in the movies. And I saw obviously amazing bands and things if I could get that close. And I was there when it was still raining, and it changed me to the point of when my mom picked me up from the airport, she said, something's changed. And yeah, that was like the introduction to my being a free spirit.
What do you think it was that changed?
My whole everything.
I mean, like a fundamental understanding of humans?
No, it was more of, well, yeah, it was more of that so many people can come together and be peaceful and have a similar spirit and be open and loving, and it didn't matter where you came from. You know, it didn't matter if one came from the suburbs or the city or a small town. It didn't matter. We all had the same vibe of being together and being one.
Just you saying that just made me emotional.
I see that in your eyes.
So interesting. I mean, all of a
Yeah.
sudden I was like, oh, right, that's what we're here to be doing. But that's another story.
Right. And it was such of the time, you know, politically, the war, it was just such of the time. So when I came home to the suburbs, I no longer had that suburban vibe at all. So I started college for a BFA, and like you said, kind of like boys sort of lead the way. So I did a year, and I can't remember if I met somebody or not. I did a year, and it took me a long time to get through school because I did a lot of traveling. So the first place that I went, I came to California, and stayed with my aunt and uncle, and I was working at a place called London Bridges. It was a jean store in LA, and this guy walks in, and his name is John Balloon, and he's very arty, and I'm, you know, hippie.
I can't even remember you know his whole name.
I remember a lot of people's names, but I was like total hippie, you know, like no shaving or anything like that, like long hair. And he said he lived in Hawaii. Do I want to come? You know, God love my parents. I call him, I said, I'm moving to Hawaii. So,
Oh my God.
I moved to Hawaii, and we lived in a commune, and squatting on someone's land on the Kona side of the Big Island. And I built a tree house with another girl. And there was obviously no running water, you know, nothing, but it rains every day. So we'd all collect water. And how I did this, I really don't know. And my life prior to this life is kind of almost somebody else's life. And the only reason that I know all this is real is because there's photos of everything. So I lived there, and what happened to me with art was I'm a very cartoony kind of artist. Like my style has always been very childlike. I can't draw straight lines. I can't draw realistically. I just can't. And so what we did there was do you know what a tea plant is? Mm-hmm. I think that's what they call it. It's that long bark with like the big leaves that come out. Anyways, we would cut those down and put wax on both sides, and I made the labels for those. And so I stayed there for...
Wait a minute, what do you mean? You cut them down?
You cut them down to about this size, and you wax both sides. And we sold them to the people that came on vacation.
Oh, because then they could grow them.
They could grow them when they came back home. And
now
so I made the labels for those.
Okay.
So I was there for my 21st birthday, and then I decided it was time to come home. So what I did while I was there was I was doing art there, just doing labels and stuff. So I came back and went to school again for art, and just kind of fine arts, like playing with everything. Then
where did you go?
Eastern Michigan.
Okay.
And a couple other schools. Like I came back one time and I went to Wayne State, and then I went to Northern Michigan, which is like in the upper UP, because I couldn't get far away from my family. I was rebellious, but I never got in trouble. But I was a free spirit. I've always had like wanderlust and wonderlust. So from Woodstock,
That's a nice combination, wanderlust and
Oh
wanderlust.
yeah, and they're both different. They're completely different. And I still have both of those. So from there, I moved to where did I go next? I moved to upstate New York, kind of like around where Woodstock was, and there I built like a shack cabin with another woman, where it had no running water or electricity, and we had 2 Ben Franklin stoves. And to insulate it in the winter, somebody told us to do it, we'd gotten windows, like remnant windows. And obviously people helped us do it. And we put leaves behind plastic, I lost what it's called. This cone?
Viscose?
The big thick plastic. And that's what insulated us. And I lived there for about a year, and there I did drawings of, there's a catalog. Are you familiar with the Whole Earth catalog? The Whole Earth catalog is very part of that movement. And it was a catalog called The Connection, and it was where things were sold to kind of live off the grid.
Oh.
But everything was illustrated. The photos in there were more like prose by yogis and things like that, but all of the products were illustrated by different artists. And so I did a bunch of the borders. And then I left there and came back to school. I lived in a teepee there also.
Wait a minute, are you the same person that told me that you never considered yourself an artist until just recently because you just sold a piece?
Yeah. And the reason is because of all my years of drawing and things, I never really had an affinity for it. I mean, I had the skill, and I went to school, but I never had a passion. And as I've gotten older and I've looked at other artists and I hear about what passion means, to be passionate about something, whether it be music or any form of the arts or anything, it's in your heart. And I perceived it as, somebody wakes up in the middle of the night and says, oh God, I have to do this or fix this, or that's all you think about. And I've wanted that my whole life. And the clay has become my passion. And I do wake up at 2:00 in the morning and say, oh, I want to change that, or it's constant in my head. So just try to segue briefly. So when I was in upstate New York, I lived in like a teepee. I lived in a Ford panel truck with windows all around. I made tickets for a musical fair thing, and then I came back to school. So my experiences have been multifaceted as far as living different places. I did always do something artistic, and usually on the level of like an advertising kind of thing, but my style was very loose, and I've always considered it kind of cartoony and loose. Like I did some murals at people's houses. So then I moved to California the final time, and my first job was at FITM, where
Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising.
And they, got to go back for a second. So I finished school with a BFA and a teaching credentials.
Oh, good.
And my major was printmaking, and I liked intaglio. And so by the time I got out of school, because it took me so many years, I went to get a teaching job, and they pink slipped the school, meaning that they took away art, music. They took away everything that was important, fantastic. And I told you I was like really bad in school. And my worst subject is math. Like God made calculators for me and a couple other people. So they gave me a roving cart, and I was to teach math and art. And I'm like, I could probably fake it through English and maybe history, but so that didn't last very long. That was like in the middle of the whole thing. So when I came to California the final time, I worked at FITM, and I felt that they say teachers are so good on a one-on-one and explaining things. I got a job there as an out-of-state admissions counselor because I'm good on the phone. Anyways, I was in a cubicle, which I'd never been in a cubicle environment before, and it was killing me. So I was facing a mini blind all the time. And I'm thinking to myself, I bet I could paint murals on mini blinds. So, and this is how I actually met my husband. So I went to a downtown manufacturer of mini blinds, figuring that they had remnants. He was my rep, and funny and from the Bronx, and I never met anyone like him before. And so I named my company Made in the Shade. And I started painting murals on mini blinds. And I took wallpaper and I took whatever the print from the wallpaper was and I put it on the blind.
What? How genius is this?
I thought so.
Yeah. So people that have wallpaper on their walls, then they have the matching wallpaper on their mini blinds.
That's a
and
mini
it-
plane, yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't even look like there's a break.
Pretty much, but so I was gearing towards children's stuff because I always have flared towards that. And I don't know, even though I've taken art all my life, I never got like mixing and stuff like that. So my stuff has always been like a solid color. It hasn't been like mixing other colors like you do in your art. It's just been, here's a turquoise, here's a red, sometimes just out of a bottle. So I didn't really make a living at it. Some people bought them, and because I have the gift of gab, I promoted myself. And there's I can't think of LA, something or other in LA, and I made a couple of big blinds for them, and then that didn't fly. And then Vinny and I got married, and for 36 years, we had a custom drapery and bedding company. And we designed and we sold, we subcontracted everything else out. And that's how we made our living. So for me, it was everything that I am. I like being around people. It covered my art, my creative side. It's sales, good at
Problem
sales.
solving.
Yeah. And it was like my whole identity, which is very cool. So through that whole time, like I've always dabbled. For example, like that over there, that's a fused glass thing. I did that. I did some stained glass.
By the way, Clifton says she's a Michigan girl. He's in Detroit himself.
Really, I'm from Southfield.
There you go.
So you know where Wayne State is. I went there for a year. So I've dabbled. You know, I call
Right,
it
you
dabbling
try stuff on.
a lot. Yes, like shoes.
Yeah.
And
Like underwear.
yeah, well, okay, like lipstick. So, but you know, talking about art like we did before, like I would take a workshop, and more often than not, I would throw whatever it was I was working on in the garbage when I left the place. Which I think it was an insecurity thing. I was
like, why? Because it was that bad, or you
No.
just didn't like? I
couldn't connect. I mean, I know I have some of the skills and I'm artistic, but I didn't have the passion. You know, in fact, I took a pastel class in Thousand Oaks, and the instructor took all of her stuff to the Ventura Fair, and I won first place for adult amateur. And then, yeah, pretty cool. And then I threw it away. So a lot, you know, now I look in hindsight and I go, I didn't even take pictures. So
That was my next question.
no. And I think that we're not finished, and
Clifton says he's a Wayne State grad.
there you go. I went there for a year. I don't know, Eastern. So then we did the drapes, and I was dabbling in like just taking workshops. I've always taken workshops, but I've never loved anything. But then I took a workshop for Zentangle. You know what that is? So Zentangle is basically doodling, like
You know, it seems to me, I might have even asked you the question, what is that?
Zentangle?
Yeah.
It's
You might have explained it to me and I just can't remember.
didn't.
You didn't? It
No.
wasn't you. It might have
It was
been somebody else.
Zentangle is kind of different shapes and different shapes that you put together, and you can form an image. So for example, instead of shading, you can do itty bitty shapes like boxes together or circles together, whatever, and form a thing.
Okay.
So I kind of like that because I always have worked small. I needed the centering because I have a lot of energy, and so I needed to work small. So that kind of got me into looking at things in a different way, looking at the world with texture and small patterns, you know, whether it be leaves or fabric on a thing, you know, a chair, or like I was doing that when I was working, and I started really looking at the textiles and intrigued by the colors. So we sold our business and we moved here. Oh, I live in Sun Lakes in a 55 and over community in a place called Banning, which is about 2 hours from Los Angeles.
It's out in the desert, really.
It's close Palm Springs, and it's basically a Gulf community, and everybody has to be at least 55 to live here. So
How'd you get in?
you're so sweet. So easy.
So easy.
So easy. So I was really beyond miserable when I moved here, like beyond. And the reasons why I'm miserable was so insane. So you guys are going to need to know this. I would sit in my closet and cry because I had no place to wear my regular clothes. I couldn't wear my shoes. Because this is like funky. And
right, because it's part of your personality.
Yes.
It's part of the way you express yourself.
Yes.
I totally can. Sometimes I fantasize about moving to Hawaii, and I'm like, what would I do with all my cool clothes?
telling you, or jewelry. And
Yeah.
I have this humongous tattoo, and I mean, tattoos are popular and all of that, but I got my first one when I was 22, and it's kind of grown down my back, and it's big.
Nice little
Yeah, no, it's
pieces
like
of
all
it.
the way back. So, I did some, I was miserable, and then I thought, okay, you know, maybe I should draw something, whatever. So I did some pastels of the cat and this and that, and just didn't move me at all. And I figured, what the hell am I doing here? So I started thinking, what is it that I need? And I realized that it was tactile. I needed to, all I could say was like gush something. I needed to gush something. And then it dawned on me, that's clay. And believe it or not, there are not a lot of clay studios in the whole desert area or in Redlands, which is the college community a little bit outside of here.
It's coming. I have no doubt in my mind that it's coming.
Well, there was a couple
Yeah.
of studios, but they did practical, functional things, you know, bowls, cups, things like that. So I took a class on the wheel. I have too much energy. I couldn't center. Nothing in my world is even. You know, I mean, uneven works for me.
it's reflective of you.
It is. I consider myself quirky, and I just hated it. I hated it. You know, like I'd go up, I just hated it. So then I'm thinking, what is this? And it dawned on me that that's really mushing and clay. So I found this studio in La Quinta, which is like about an hour from where I live, past Palm Springs. And it's called Old Artisan Studio, and they have everything there. They have wheels, and they have painting, and they have fused glass, and they have sculpture. So I started there a year and a half ago, and the first thing we were supposed to do was a head, which I showed you.
Yes.
So I did a head, and I figured out how to do noses, and I figured out how to do mouths, but I couldn't do eyes, so I just left holes.
It's actually very cool. It's a little creepy, but it's pretty
That's
cool.
very creepy. It's very creepy, and it's very creepy. So it's outside, and from there.
Here, you keep talking. I'm going to go get some of your work.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Keep talking.
Okay. So from there, I started to do these things that were no eyes, like kind of. Like, can you get the big thing there with the head, please?
Yes.
Thanks. So I started doing things that were heads or bodies, but can I hold it?
Of course you can.
Okay.
Here, talk about it.
Okay, so
Go
this
for
is
it.
big. So I started putting marbles in it, and I liked the way they melted. And because I was into like looking at things through patterns and things like that, that's kind of where it came from. But I never knew what I was making. I sort of like would take a glob of clay, and it became a circle. And then I think, oh, I'm going to make a head, but I don't know what it's going to look like. And so what I started doing was just taking clay and ripping it. Just going, oh, it looks good here, it looks good there. So I was into this kind of stuff for a while.
Were you just like, were you just rolling it with a
No.
roller? You were just smushing it between your fingers?
This? Yeah.
Well, anything.
Yeah, well, I made...
Here, I'm gonna
Okay.
come down a little bit
Thank
more so you
for
can
looking
see
at
that.
me, buddy. I made like pinch pots. So I knew it was going to be a head, but I didn't know it was going to be a head. It just sort of became a head. And then I just started ripping things and putting them on. And so to me, it looked really like Aztec. I don't know why, but it did. So then I did a bunch of heads. Can I pull this?
Yes?
And then I started making things like this. But
Here.
I can't make faces.
Here, I'll
Okay.
hold it up and you can talk
Thank you.
about it.
I can't make faces. So
I
I
mean,
just
look at her. She looks like she's